Lately, I think people consume music for very different reasons. For me, it's I see music as a medium of expression, and and by expression, I mean fully actually saying the things I can't say in a normal conversation. You know, as an artist, it's so easy to it's you often rely on nuances to get you to say what you want to say. Like for example, the sound of a beat, the kick, the drums, the pianos, whatever. And those trigger senses in you that actually allow you to explain yourself better than you would do in a normal conversation. And most artists tend to be very introverted in their mannerisms. So music lets them escape that, how do I put it, that boundary per se. As a creative, that's how I see music. Now, the listener, that's a whole different story, obviously. I look at music as poetry, and with poetry, you can emphasize certain feelings and emotions that can resonate with a whole bunch of people. And these are people who probably are not allowed to, or maybe don't have the capacity to do the things you do as a musician. So they can resonate when you do it and say, oh, wow, that reminded me of when I was here. And maybe you were in a restaurant in Paris or something, and you heard a song, and it kind of sticks with you because next time you hear that song anywhere else, it takes you back to where you were, or maybe a breakup, depression, happiness, love, relationships. Music tends to be a certain kind of hub that stores all these emotions that we tend to forget in passing since time is moving so fast. So when you press play on a record, I feel like it takes you back to a certain state, or it triggers something that you feel. And I think that's what the listener, or maybe that's what draws people to a certain kind of sound. Probably because music can also serve as a metaphor for identity in terms of spaces. I'm an African, I grew up in Africa, and I grew up listening to all sorts of music. It was R&B, it was hip hop, it was Afro beats. And that carries on with me, even though I live in Scandinavia right now. And it's a way of connecting to my culture and my roots and my heritage. And music is like that bridge where I feel like if I let go of the music, then I've lost myself pretty much. And then that encompasses and embodies itself in the clothes I wear, the sneakers I choose to wear as opposed to regular shoes. And it's just me, just the cultural movements really that consumes a person. It's like a rock star. When you see rock stars, you see their whole aura about them. And it reminds them of something. They're trying to translate a moment in time that steps into a zeitgeist of sorts, and it creates a personality of who you are. And it's pretty much a memorial or a reminder of where we're coming from and who we are as human beings. Oh, that's a great question. For me, it's I look at things on what you call a logarithmic scale, and it's like 10 years, right? And every 10 years is a paradigm shift. No matter how you look at it, there's always going to be a paradigm shift. You don't have to agree with it, but it will happen. If there's 60,000 or 100,000 songs coming out on Spotify every day, that's means there are 100,000 more people who have access to creating their own. They have the freedom and democracy to put out their own music, and that's okay, that's fine. But at the end of the day, the question is how authentic are you? It doesn't matter. How I also look at it is if I go to a library, for example, I think about all the books I never read. Right? I look at the library shelves, and there's thousands of books, and I'm never going to read all of them. That's impossible. I'm probably going to find my favorite Frank Miller or Douglas Adams or Terry Pratchett or something like that, and be like, okay, this is what I want. I'm going to stick to that. Or Neil Gaiman, and be like, okay, this is what I'm going to read. Then I start thinking, what about the other books we never read? Oh, I never, there's so many books I never even going to look at. It's the same way I look at it as a Spotify library. People will always find what they want. For an artist to want all this millions of stream and reach everybody. Not everybody gets to do that. Before Drake, it was Michael Jackson. Before Michael Jackson, it was the Beatles. So success to me is being comfortable in your own vulnerability and being comfortable in the fact that knowing that certain people, no matter how small or how big, actually stick with you over time. If you're authentic, it will stick out. And for me, that's worked for me so far. Anyways, at least I think so. And yeah, and I'm comfortable with it. I'm happy with it. And well, that's because I think it's because we live in a generation where you can access YouTube and see your favorite artists performing in front of 40,000 people. And instead of putting yourself in the audience perspective, you're putting yourself in that artist's perspective. And so when you're creating music, most artists I know somehow envision themselves performing in front of so many people. And I think that feeling, which is pretty much a competition with you and your own ego, which I think it's not a good thing in my opinion anyways, that's what is driving them. A lot of them think that they need to get to that point where they can perform in front of 100 people, 100,000 people, or 80,000 people, or just a lot of people, and pretty much mimic that thing they saw on social media or on YouTube. And that's when it's like, yes, we've made it. I performed 50 people, I performed 500 people. And I always treat them kind of the same, but I just change the music, depending on which room I'm in, kind of thing. I do that a lot. So it's about adjusting and being comfortable with who you are and your own growth, because people try to force it too much. Even Miles Davis said that sometimes you have to play for a long time before you can play like yourself. So that's how I look at it. It's the metric system these days that it kind of lies to us. You just have to look beyond the lie. I think it was Banksy who said that invisibility was a superpower. You know, and I've always thought about that. And Jean-Michel Basquiat, who talked about being reclusive. In other words, not being out there just to be out there. A lot of people want to just be out there just to be seen. And of course, money plays a role. Everybody wants to be rich, you know, so I don't blame them. Well, that's a difficult question. I mean, obviously, an artist who creates music or art for whatever reason, whatever purpose, will always tell you it's art. And who am I to say it's not? But to touch on what you talked about in terms of creating music for a certain kind of monetary outcome, I don't think that's art. Then I think you're just doing it for certain reasons, but I don't think it's art. When I make music, I just release it. I don't think about anything. I don't think about playlists. I don't think about streams. I don't think about all that. But what I do think about is the presentation of the work. That is all I care about, the presentation of the work. Because over time, I realized that people who really have a good eye and have great taste, they see it. It's usually the ones who don't pay attention. They're the ones, I think that's the problem. People forget to notice that there's a difference between who's listening to your music and who's picking up your music. Because you ask yourself the question, if you printed 100 vinyls right now, and let's say you have 100 million streams on Spotify, you think, will people buy your 100 vinyls in real life? It sounds crazy to say, and you think 100 vinyls is nothing, but I've seen artists who have struggled to sell stuff in real life because they keep paying attention to what's going on in the digital platform. Like I said, it depends on the space you're in. The guy who was playing the piano and it got 100 million streams, maybe it wasn't his intention to get 100 million streams. Maybe it just happened. And that's one thing. That's a whole different story. But I do believe that people don't want to go through the trenches when it comes to making music. A lot of people think they could just go into the studio, make one quick record. Does it sound great? Yeah, it sounded great. Put it out. And the worst thing that can happen to you is to get famous quickly. It's what I always tell my students sometimes. I'm like, don't ever get famous quickly. Why are you trying to do that? For me personally, I give myself a 5-year plan. I'm on year 4, right? I guess over a 5-year plan, I said, okay, let's treat this like it's a master's degree at the university you're going to go study. When you get to university, you don't get a master's degree like that, do you? And if you go to a master's degree like that, you're probably going to lose that job in a couple of months because you couldn't keep up. And that's how I try to juxtapose that with what happens in the industry. A lot of people don't want to go through the so-called failed artists phase, but I think that's exactly where the beauty lies, because you keep learning and keep reinventing yourself. So if music is being made today for that purpose, I agree with you. But at the same time, to each his own, I guess. I don't know.